that is cuckolds, both literal cucks and metaphorical cucks. And it is as it should be. You should despise cucks. And see, because what is a cuckold? A cuckold, by the strictest definition, is a man whose woman is fucking other men. That's basically what a cuckold is, right? And potentially that man will wind up being the quote-unquote father to another man's child, devoting his resources and his energy to another man's child. Now, as I understand it, the word cuckold comes from the cuckoo bird, or the word for cuckoo bird. Cuckoo birds are birds that basically lay their eggs in the nests of other birds, birds that are not of their own species, right? And the other birds spend resources in raising the cuckoo bird's offspring, right? And so that apparently, from what I understand, I could be wrong, that's where the word cuckold comes from. And we men despise cuckolds. We despise them, we look down upon them. We fling the word as an insult, even towards men who are not technically cuckolds, but when we see a weakling or somebody that we despise, we fling that word at them. And like I said, we should do so. Well, let me explain. Why do men hate cuckolds, cucks? Well, it's simplicity itself, because we're afraid of ever falling into that situation. Of course. We're afraid of becoming cucks. No man wants to be raising another man's child. And so, of course, that which we fear becoming, we hate, and we point to it. And we say, look at that guy, look at that cuckold. What a piece of shit. And that's the thing. That's the important part, the important bit about hating cucks. See, the fact is that you grow to hate a cuck and despise him because you're afraid of becoming one yourself. And this is a powerful mechanism in human emotions, because it doesn't apply just to cuckoldry. It applies to a whole host of emotions. Because, you see, here's the key thing about being a cuck. It's easy to become one. Now, I don't mean in the sense that, all women are just eager to fuck some other guy. No. I'm not talking about the ease of that. I'm talking about the fact that, see, it's easy to fall into a pattern of acceptance of something that ought to be intolerable. It's easy, as I said in the last video, for a man to sort of try to explain to himself why being a cuck is really his own fault, right? Or how to explain it away and just sort of just let it slide, as opposed to making a stand. It's easy to take the easy path. The easy path being, of course, acceptance. Because, see, not accepting cuckoldry, not allowing yourself to fall into that, well, that takes effort. You have to make the effort. You have to set a line and live by that line, and be willing to make the sacrifices to uphold that line. If you decide or you figure that being a cuckold is something that is unacceptable to you, it is a line, a bright red line that you are unwilling to cross, well, when a woman, if and when a woman crosses it in your life, you have to be willing to carry out the implied threat. The implied threat being, of course, leaving that woman, throwing away the life you've built with that woman, and moving on with your life without her, without the woman who cuckolded you. You see? And so that's why you're going to find that in so many cases, see, men will mock something and vilify it because we are all collectively afraid of being that. It's not just cuckoldry, of course. It's, for instance, cowardice. We all mock cowards because at heart we're all afraid of falling into cowardice. And so men need the negative example. We need the social ostracism, the punishment that comes from failing to live up to a certain standard. It could be cuckoldry, it could be cowardice, it could be a whole host of things. I mean, think of, for instance, being dishonest in your business dealings. We all despise thieves and people who are dishonest in their business dealings, even when we don't have any kind of business relationship with the guy. You see, we see some guy walking down the street and we heard that he's a cheat, and we all point and say, hey, he's a cheating bad man, right? But why is it? Why is it that we vilify the man who's a shyster and who's a cheat at business, right? He could be a wonderful man in every other regard, but the fact that he's a cheat in business makes him vilified. We all despise him. Why is that? Well, because falling into that pattern of cheating is very, very easy. That pattern of being dishonest. And we're afraid of sliding into it. We're afraid because we know that the temptations are great to fall into it. I mean, come on. There is a reason that the high road is so difficult to take. See, if it were easy to do the right thing all the time, well, there would be no trick to it, right? I mean, if it's the easy thing, right? But the problem is that taking the high road, living up to your standards, takes effort. And a lot of times, it's not enough to get the positive example. It's not enough. We need the negative example. We need to see the vilification of somebody who does not live up to standards, who does not walk the high road. We need that. And so we collectively as men vilify certain people because we're afraid that we might slide into that. You see? And there is nothing wrong with that. That's why there is nothing wrong with you despising people who are cucks. Because in your heart, in my heart, in the heart of all men, we find it many times easier to just be passive and just to let things slide. When we see some injustice, we're like, oh, it's just so hard to stand up. When we see some woman, your woman cheats on you, right? And you're just so comfortable and she's begging for forgiveness and, it's just easy. It's easy. And that's the thing. That's why it's so tempting. And that's why it's so important to vilify it. And see, this issue of vilifying that which you're afraid of becoming, well, see, I learned it from a young age. Because I remember when I was, in my teens or something, there are these guys, I remember, who would hate homosexuals. Now, I myself don't have any real problem with homosexuals. On a intellectual level, on a social level, I think that gay marriage and a whole host of other things that gays have gotten for themselves are actually bad for society. But on a visceral level, I don't really care about gays. They don't bother me at all. And that is, of course, because I know that I'm not gay. I like pussy, and fucking a guy just does not appeal to me at all, right? And so that's why I never quite understood why there were these guys who hated men, who hated homosexuals, who hated them and just shit on them and just made gay jokes all the time and all that. And I was like, why? What's going on? And of course, it was only later with experience I realized what was going on. See, these guys were afraid that they themselves were gay. See? And it happened, of course, especially in adolescence, when you're in that dividing line between being a boy and being a man, see? Because when you're a boy, what do you like to do? You like to play with other boys. Play ball or play this or that, Dungeons and Dragons, as I used to do, right? You like to hang out with other boys and have a good time with the boys because you yourself are a boy. And as you become an adolescent, as you sexually mature, sometimes emotionally you still like hanging out with the boys, but even though your pecker is getting hard all the time, and you're supposed to like girls, but you don't really like them because they seem like just a pain in the ass and you prefer guys. And so, of course, in that confusion of adolescence, well, what happens? The boys vilify homosexuals, call each other faggots all the time, and say all sorts of nasty shit, like they want to kill all gays or some garbage like that because they are afraid that they might be gay. That's what's going on. This insight, which I had in my teens, of course, it stood me well. See, whenever somebody vilifies something, I always sort of focus on that. And you should too. Whenever somebody vilifies a certain behavior or a certain mode of being, I usually focus on that insofar as the guy is concerned and try to figure him out from there. Because a lot of times the thing that he's vilifying, be it gays, being this, that, the other, whatever the hell he's vilifying, right? Often as not, it's because he's afraid he might become that thing. And he's almost like warning himself. His vitriol against being this, that, the other is really a way for him to say out loud the thing that he's terrified of becoming. You see what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. Because a lot of times, men are going to vilify cowards. Men are going to vilify dishonest people, dishonest men. They're going to vilify a whole host of behaviors which ought to be vilified. See? There's nothing wrong with shitting on behavior that you think is incorrect, improper, immoral, bad, wrong. There is nothing wrong with that. See, what's going on in our culture is this non-judgmental bullshit that you shouldn't judge. That you shouldn't judge, and you should just let everybody be whatever the fuck they want. Yeah, do whatever they want. Fuck that. Fuck that. No. There is behavior that is despicable. There is behavior that, while not maybe illegal, is immoral because it lowers the standards for everyone. You have to draw the line. And if you feel that, say, a cuck is just somebody despicable, say it. Say it loudly and proudly, because it is a despicable attitude. Being a cuck is not immoral in the sense of it being illegal, right? There is no prison sentence for being a cuck. But you should despise it because it is a weakness. It is a weakness that lowers our standards. Am I saying that you should do something to cucks? I mean, something like, I don't know, like beat them up or some shit like that, right? Because you hate them? Of course not. I'm not saying that you should act on your vilification of somebody. I'm not saying that you should act on your hatred, for instance, of cucks, your hatred of dishonest people. Of course not. That's not your place. It's not your place to act on those behaviors. And in point of fact, as I have said repeatedly, the difference between a man and every other creature on this earth is that a man can control his emotions. Hatred, despising somebody or something or some group of people because of a certain behavior, yeah, that's an emotion. Yeah, sure. I'm not in favor of acting on those emotions. No. But what I am saying is that the emotion you feel is, number one, justified. Number two, healthy. And number three, can help you. Can help you maintain standards. Standards for yourself. See, because do you want to be a cuck? Do you want to be a man who allows his woman to cheat on him? Or do you want to be a coward? Yeah. Do you want to be in a situation where your brothers in arms in some battle, depend on you, and when the shit starts getting heavy and the bullets are whizzing in, you run away? Do you want to be that? Do you want to be a man who cheats his business partners? Huh? Do you want to be that man who sees an opportunity to enrich himself illicitly to the detriment of others, and just do it? Do you want to be that man? Because if you do, then don't hate anybody. Don't judge anything bad. No, just let it slide. Let it all slide, okay? And if somebody else is a cuck, if somebody else is a cheat, if somebody else is a coward, no judgment, let it slide. But if you don't want to be such a man, if you want to be a man in full, if you want to be a man with standards, then you have to choose the qualities that are important to you and vilify those who do not live up to those standards. It's perfectly legitimate. In our current culture, this non-judgmental bullshit, it seems as if everybody's like, afraid of making a moral standard and taking a moral stance. Don't be like that. Take a moral stance. Have moral standards. Don't be afraid of looking down at other men, other individual men or other groups of men, looking down at them and saying their behavior is despicable, and I think little or nothing of them because of their behavior. There is nothing wrong with taking such a stance because, number one, it is making a standard that others should live up to, and much more importantly, it becomes a standard that you have to live up to.